So, you're a business owner dedicated to the significant and sustainable growth of both you and your business. Welcome to the Add a Zero podcast.
Hi, Jay Allen from My True North. Welcome to the Add a Zero podcast. I'm delighted to be sharing with you the second of our 3 mini-series supporting 7 and multi-7-figure business owners to be able to move the needles towards that 8-figure milestone. And today we're specifically talking around innovation. Jay, what do you mean by innovation? We're innovating all the time. Great. Why? Well, because that's what you have to do. Is it? You see, the problem is that we can get caught up in a trap, and there's 2 particular traps that I've witnessed over the last 5-6 years that 7 and multi-7-figure businesses fall into that run the risk of causing unnecessary friction as we look to move from 7 and multi-7 towards 8-figure. And it's all around our understanding of innovation. There's a lovely quote. The only constant in life is that of change. And I'm really fortunate enough that a while ago now, qualified first of all as a change management consultant, and then subsequently went on to become a blue ocean strategist, looking at how to be able to create disruptive pattern thinking in order to be able to create scale and wealth beyond the more traditional scale or growth foundational methodologies. So I've got a particular understanding of change and evolution and innovation, perhaps from a different perspective to that of a normal traditional business owner. The first trap is, well, we've always done it like that. We don't need to change. Why fix it if it's not broken? And the simple fact is, what's led you to where you are today is great. But it's also the risk that what's led you to where you are today could be what's holding you back from where you want to be tomorrow or at some stage in the future. And that everything that you've done that's led you to where you are today is now holding you back from being able to get to where you want to be next. The old expression, new level, new devil. Being willing to let go of what no longer serves you, even though it has in the past, in order to be able to have the time and capacity and ability to move into what is required next. The importance of retaining relevance with our ideal target client audience. And the best example of this is the businesses that did exceptionally well and the businesses that did incredibly poorly and sometimes failed beyond the wayside in 2020 during the first national lockdown. Businesses that did well weren't just the ones that sold hand sanitizer and masks, but the ones that understood the importance of quickly being able to pivot from what it was that they previously did and were currently unable to do because of lockdown into doing something else of relevance to their ideal target audience, or at least a communal audience that was unable to access that from elsewhere, from people who hadn't looked at the niche and how to be able to step into that flaw, that gap in the market. Understanding the importance of relevance to our ideal target client audience and saying, how can I better serve my existing customer? What else can I do to be of more significant importance to them in their business, to them in their lives? What else can I do to support, guide, and help them that wherever they are and whatever they do, that some of the money that they invest is invested with us or with people with whom we've partnered that we all collectively grow and support. Again, behind the scenes, this was really, really evident what was happening in 2020, 2021, moving into 2022 on a more national scale. we saw a lot of the big players, the big national brands, diversify their offering, acknowledging that what their core prime business was really struggling because of lockdown and COVID and all of the restrictions that were placed on us. That rather than trying to get into some form of price war and running businesses to loss, that they were willing to be able to reinvest in other things that were doing well, even if it was only a temporary gap to cover whilst things recovered in their core business. And we saw lots of bigger businesses behind the scenes diversify into other businesses and other industries entirely in order to remain relevant, that where and when money was being spent, some of it was being spent directly or indirectly with the big brands on the high street. So innovations to remain relevant is critical to every business at every different size. And yet, the risk is that when we get onto that innovation bandwagon, that we get so involved in learning and development that we go hell for leather with it. That we have a whole team of L&D specialists that are constantly looking to be able to tweak and move and amend and develop without creating traction. So we've got to have a measure on what do we need to do to stay ahead and the impact that's having on the relevance to our existing audience. Breaking into a new industry, breaking into a new sector, breaking into a new customer marketplace is an incredibly difficult, challenging, and time-consuming activity. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that we shouldn't do that. There are times in business where it's massively relevant to be able to take our offering and offer it to a different client base, or to have a different offering and offer it to our existing client base. That's all around evolution, growth, and development. But understanding when to do it and the measure to take on the impact it's having to ensure that we continue to retain sustainable growth, profitable growth throughout that curve is a knack that perhaps most businesses fail to grasp or would benefit from some external help and support through that period of evolution. So innovation is good as long as we understand what we're doing, why we're doing, and who we're serving by doing so. That's the first step. The other one, like I say, is we either get so stuck in the, we've always done it this way, why should we ever bother moving on, that we get caught up and we become the bottleneck, or we get so involved in doing it all the time that we're almost breaking things for the sake of it without any real measure on the impact it's having on our customer, the loyalty, and where and when the money is being spent. So what I want to offer you is a 4-step blue ocean strategy on how to be able to consider being able to do something different that moves you away from being compared on price and moves you into a smaller category, as Joe Calloway talks about in his book, Category of One, how to become so unique to the ideal customer that you serve that there isn't a direct competition, that we own the marketplace, that we are leaders in the field. The first thing is, how much do you truly know about your ideal target customer audience? What do you know on them? Not just on their engagement with you, but on where else are they spending their pound? If they're spending 3 or 5 or 7 pence in the pound with you and your business, where's the other 93 pence being spent? Who other companies and brands are they loyal to? And what could you do to become more influential in those sectors and industries, either through partnerships and joint ventures or becoming a competitor, in order that more of that pound is spent with you? What do you need to do more of? What can you learn from your existing customers in order that you could become more relevant to more people? The first thing is, how do you ramp up the engagement with your existing customers in order to become as relevant and as valuable to them as possible. In my, not just lifetime, but in my business lifetime, I've watched this little thing pop up that's evolved and grown into this global, massive entity called Amazon. It's almost on everybody's phone. It's almost the go-to for people who want something quick, easy, quick and efficient to be delivered on time and to a place of your choosing. And yet it's evolved out of nowhere. We used to have a high street where we had car parks and you walked onto the street and you had to go and find a shop and a department and the right product. And all of that's disappeared pretty much on the premise of availability and suitability, that I can sit in the bath at 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning and click on a button and know that in 4, 5, 6, 8 hours, I've got an email confirmation to say it's on its way to me. So what do we need to do more of to become more connected with our existing customers, to become more valuable to them, that every time that they spend money, it's either directly with us or with one of our partners or joint ventures or within our hemisphere, that in some way we benefit from doing so. The next thing is, what can you stop doing? What are you currently offering right now that's taking up bandwidth and website space and marketing collateral that is no longer serving your ideal target customers? What are the things that you need to shelve and archive that are no longer serving the business well? There are likely to be things in your business that are historic, that have got you to where you are, that are preventing you from getting you to where you want to be next. The things that we've done that we no longer need to do. In one particular industry that I work with, we often refer to it as Mrs. Miggins' apple tree. What I mean by that is, when we were a startup, we really enjoyed working with Mrs. Miggins and her little apple tree. We were happy to be able to earn 100, 200 quid servicing Mrs. Miggins. And then as the business grew and evolved and developed, we ended up with 300, 400, 500, 800 different Mrs. Migginses, all paying us £200 or £300. But at that time, we started to win businesses on the same estate. They'd seen us around for the last 10, 15 years servicing Mrs. Miggins' apple tree. And as a result, they started to say, can you look after our estate? And the invoices were 3 and 6 and 8 and £10,000 at a time. And as the business continued to grow and evolve and develop, we got more and more of those. And at some stage, we realised that we can't afford to still keep putting our team out to service Mrs. Miggins' apple tree at 200 or 300 quid. Where the same time, the team could be out working on the business down the road for £10,000. It just doesn't make any financial sense anymore. The things that have led us to where we are the things that are now preventing us from getting us to where we want to be next. The evolution of who we are and what we do and who we do it for has to move with the times. So what are we going to stop doing? What are we going to put on the shelf? What are we going to archive and say, we don't do that anymore? Or we certainly don't do that anymore for new customers. We're going to take on this space instead. It's about being able to build space into the business in order to be able to fill it with the right ideal target new customer. And then thirdly, what do we need to do differently? How are people comparing us against everybody else in the marketplace? Because the risk when we are so comparable to our competitor is it then just becomes down on price. And we end up with a price war that we're doing more for earning less. And as a 7-figure business, I can almost guarantee you've been caught in that trap from before, even with regards to the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, weekend of hell, where we end up charging pittance for giving away bundles and bundles of profitability. So what do we need to do differently? How do we segment ourselves from other people? What do we need to be able to offer either to a different client audience in a different manner, packaged or bundled differently, priced differently, in order that we are not so easily comparable with everybody else in the market? How do we segment ourselves on who we do, what we do, how we do, who we do it for, in such a way that it becomes now impossible to have a like-for-like comparison? How do we therefore build on quality, or on service, or on availability, or on end result, as opposed to comparable on price? I've mentioned it before, I'm going to quickly mention it again. How do we become a category of one? Joe Calloway talks about it in his book very efficiently. But what are you doing to innovate in such a way that you are more relevant to a larger audience of people that know, like, trust you and your brand? What are you doing to archive the things that no longer serve you well by understanding opportunity cost of things that you are missing out on because of your current capacity to service the Mrs. Migginses of this world? And it's only when we take a pragmatic look at everything that we've done that's led us to where we are that we can then say, and what do we need to do differently? What do we need to do more of? And what do we simply need to stop doing? Hope that's been a real provocative thinking for you. I'd love to get your feedback. And if you've enjoyed today's show, don't forget to click and subscribe. God bless, take care. I'll see you again next week.
That's all for this episode. As always, we really thank you for listening and welcome your comments, thoughts, and suggestions. So please do drop us a line by emailing podcast@mytruenorth.biz. And don't forget, if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button on whichever platform you're listening to this through. And tell your colleagues and business network all about who we are. You've been listening to the Add a Zero podcast presented by Jay Allen. Brought to you in association with My True North, the UK's leading ethical coaching company.